Napalm. The smell hits you first. Not gunpowder. Not napalm. Those come later. It's the smell of a 19-year-old boy's intestines spilling into monsoon mud, steaming in the 100-degree heat, mixing with the copper stench of blood and the sweet rot of jungle vegetation. It's the smell of burned human flesh, not like barbecue, despite what some soldiers said to keep from screaming, but something chemical, wrong, a violation of everything the human brain recognizes as acceptable. It's the smell of your best friend's face melted off by white phosphorus, his eyes boiled in their sockets, his mouth frozen in a soundless scream that you'll hear every night for the next 50 years. This is Vietnam. This is where mothers received folded flags and sons who came home in aluminum boxes, if they came home at all. This is where 58,220 American teenagers learned that their government had lied, that victory was impossible, that dying for a mistake still kills you just as dead. You're 18 years old. 6 months ago, you were taking your girlfriend to prom in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, you're crouched in elephant grass taller than your head, your hands shaking so violently you can barely hold your M16, listening to your sergeant's lung collapse from a sucking chest wound while he begs you, not for a medic. Medics are already dead. But to shoot him. Please God, just shoot him, because the pain is biblical and the morphine ran out yesterday. You don't shoot him. You hold his hand while he drowns in his own blood, his fingers digging into your wrist so hard they leave bruises you'll carry for weeks. And you watch his eyes change from terror to pleading to nothing at all. It takes 4 minutes. You count every second. The jungle is alive with death. Punji stakes smeared with human feces wait in hidden pits to impale your legs. The infection guaranteed to turn your blood septic within days. Tripwires strung across trails connect to grenades, to mines, to artillery shells rigged as booby traps that turn 3 men into red mist and scattered meat. The trees themselves explode when artillery rounds detonate in the canopy, sending wooden shrapnel through bodies like 1,000 knives. You learn to recognize the sound of different weapons by their crack and echo. AK-47s sound different than M16, different than the heavy thud of a .50 caliber machine gun tearing someone in half at the waist. You learn other things too. You learn that a human head weighs about 11 pounds and feels wrong when you're carrying your friend's body in pieces because there wasn't enough left for one bag. You learn that napalm doesn't just burn. It sticks, it clings, it keeps burning underwater, and the screaming doesn't stop until the vocal cords themselves are destroyed. You learn that children can be enemy combatants, that the smiling 12-year-old girl selling Coca-Cola at the base perimeter might be the same one who rolls a grenade into your tent at night. You learn that there is no front line, no safe zone, no moment when you can stop being terrified. The heat is medieval. 115 degrees with 100% humidity, so thick you can barely breathe, and you're carrying 70 pounds of gear through jungle that fights you with every step. Your uniform rots on your body. Jungle rot eats the skin between your toes, your crotch, anywhere moisture collects. Leeches attached to places you can't see, swelling with your blood until they're the size of your thumb. Mosquitoes swarm in clouds so thick they black out the sun, carrying malaria, dengue fever, diseases that make you wish for a clean bullet instead. And the bullets come. They come in the middle of the night when you're on watch, so exhausted you can barely keep your eyes open, and suddenly the jungle erupts with muzzle flashes and the crack, crack, crack of automatic weapons fire, and you're firing back at shadows, at sounds, at nothing and everything. You're firing until your barrel glows red hot and your ears are bleeding from the percussion, and someone is screaming. Maybe you. You're not sure anymore. And when the sun comes up, there are bodies everywhere. Some wear black pajamas. Some wear your uniform. You can't tell the difference anymore because pieces are scattered across 30 meters and identification tags are melted into chest cavities. According to National Archives combat records, the average age of an American soldier in Vietnam was 19 years old. 19. Not old enough to drink legally. Not old enough to rent a car. Old enough to die screaming in a bomb crater while your legs lie 15 feet away, still wearing their boots. Old enough to write letters home that start with "Dear Mom" and end with lies about how you're safe, you're fine, don't worry, everything's okay. When the truth is, you're already dead inside, just waiting for your body to catch up. This isn't a war movie. There are no heroic speeches, no dramatic music swells, no slow-motion glory. There's only mud and blood and the wet tearing sound of bullets entering flesh, the high-pitched whine of a man crying for his mother as he bleeds out, the 1,000-yard stare of boys who've seen things that turned them into old men overnight. There's only the radio crackle confirming another helicopter down, another medevac turned into a fireball, another load of wounded burning alive because the pilot took ground fire and couldn't pull up in time. The Vietnam War killed 58,220 Americans. It wounded 304,000 more. Wounds of body, wounds of mind, wounds that never heal. It killed over 3 million Vietnamese. It poisoned an entire country with chemical defoliants that still cause birth defects 3 generations later. It cost $168 billion. It shattered American faith in government, in military, power, in the idea that we were the good guys. And for what? For nothing. For a strategic theory that proved false. For dominoes that never fell. For politicians who lied, and generals who measured success in body counts, and a public that stopped believing, and soldiers who came home to a nation that wanted to forget they existed. The jungle screams. It screamed then. It screams now in the nightmares of every man who survived, in the empty chairs at family dinners, in the names carved into black granite in Washington. 58,220 names. 58,220 teenagers who died in the mud for a mistake. Welcome to Vietnam. Welcome to America's longest nightmare. Welcome to the war that proved even superpowers can bleed to death in jungles they don't understand, fighting enemies they can't see, for reasons that were never true. The smell never goes away. The jungle screams, not with voices, but with the high-pitched whistle of incoming mortars, the metallic crack of AK-47 fire tearing through elephant grass, and the wet, choking sounds of 19-year-old boys drowning in their own blood in rice paddies 10,000 miles from home. This is Vietnam. This is where 58,220 American names would be carved into black granite. This is where a superpower learned that firepower cannot defeat an idea, and where a generation was shattered beyond recognition. According to the National Archives, the United States entered the Vietnam conflict with absolute confidence. By 1965, President Lyndon Johnson had committed combat troops to South Vietnam, convinced that American military superiority would crush the communist insurgency within months. The Pentagon projected victory. The generals promised results. The body bags promised something else entirely. The war didn't start in 1965. It metastasized there. American involvement traces back to 1954, when the French colonial empire collapsed at Dien Bien Phu. The Geneva Accords split Vietnam at the 17th parallel. Communist North under Ho Chi Minh, anti-communist South under Ngo Dinh Diem. The United States, terrified of the domino theory, the belief that if one Southeast Asian nation fell to communism, all would follow, poured military advisors and money into propping up the South Vietnamese government. By 1963, 16,000 American military advisors were in country. Then came the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964. North Vietnamese torpedo boats allegedly attacked the USS Maddox in international waters. Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, granting President Johnson sweeping war powers without a formal declaration of war. Declassified documents from the National Security Agency, released decades later, reveal that the second attack, the one that truly ignited congressional fury, likely never happened. The war was built on a phantom. The buildup was massive. By 1968, over 500,000 American troops were deployed in Vietnam. The Defense Department records show the scale. Operation Rolling Thunder unleashed more bombs on North Vietnam than were dropped in all of World War II. 7 million tons of ordnance fell on Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Napalm turned villages into infernos. Agent Orange, a chemical defoliant designed to strip the jungle cover, poisoned millions of acres and generations of Vietnamese civilians and American veterans alike. The soldiers sent to fight this war were children. The average age of a combat soldier in Vietnam was 19, according to Veterans Administration statistics. In World War II, it was 26. These were high school graduates, many drafted, thrust into a war with no clear front lines, no territory to hold, no cities to liberate. The mission was body count. Kill more of them than they kill of you. The metric was deaths, not victory. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army didn't fight conventionally. They used guerrilla warfare, ambushes, booby traps, tunnel networks stretching for miles beneath the jungle floor. The Cu Chi tunnels alone extended over 120 miles. American soldiers faced an enemy who could disappear into the population, who knew every trail, every river, every shadow. Punji stakes, sharpened bamboo spears smeared with feces, waited in hidden pits. Tripwires triggered grenades. The jungle itself was weaponized. Search and destroy missions became the standard. Small units of American infantry would sweep through villages, searching for Viet Cong, often finding only terrified civilians. The line between combatant and non-combatant blurred, then vanished. On March 16, 1968, in the village of My Lai, soldiers from Charlie Company massacred over 500 unarmed Vietnamese civilians, old men, women, children, infants. They were shot, bayoneted, raped. The army initially covered it up. When investigative journalist Seymour Hersh exposed the atrocity, America recoiled in horror. Lieutenant William Kelly was convicted of murder. He served 3.5 years under house arrest. My Lai wasn't an outlier in brutality. It was an outlier in accountability. Free fire zones, where anything that moved could be killed, covered vast areas. Pacification programs relocated millions of South Vietnamese villagers into strategic hamlets. Refugee camps ringed with barbed wire, destroying the social fabric of rural Vietnam. The Phoenix program, a CIA-directed operation, documented in declassified National Archives files, targeted Viet Cong infrastructure through assassination, capture, and interrogation. Between 1968 and 72, the program claimed over 26,000 enemy killed. Many were civilians. Back home, America was tearing itself apart. The anti-war movement exploded. Students occupied universities. Protests turned violent. At Kent State University in May 1970, Ohio National Guardsmen opened fire on unarmed student protesters, killing 4, wounding 9. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago in 1968 devolved into riots as police clubbed protesters in the streets while the world watched on television. Television changed everything. Vietnam was the first televised war. Every night, American families watched body bags burning villages, screaming children fleeing napalm strikes. The most famous image, a naked 9-year-old girl, Kim Phuc, running from a napalm attack, her skin melting, shattered the government's narrative of controlled, winnable war. Walter Cronkite, America's most trusted news anchor, returned from Vietnam in 1968 and declared the war unwinnable. President Johnson reportedly said, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." The Tet Offensive in January 1968 broke the illusion. Over 80,000 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched simultaneous attacks on more than 100 cities and towns across South Vietnam, including a raid on the American embassy in Saigon. Militarily, the offensive was a disaster for the North. They suffered catastrophic casualties. But strategically, psychologically, it was a triumph. The American public watched in disbelief. The enemy, supposedly on the brink of defeat, had just attacked everywhere at once. General William Westmoreland requested 200,000 more troops. Johnson refused and announced he wouldn't seek re-election. Richard Nixon won the presidency in 1968, promising peace with honor and a secret plan to end the war. The secret plan was Vietnamization, shifting combat responsibilities to South Vietnamese forces while withdrawing American troops. It was withdrawal disguised as strategy. American combat deaths dropped, but the war expanded. In 1970, Nixon ordered the invasion of Cambodia to destroy North Vietnamese sanctuaries. The move triggered massive protests. American troop levels fell from over 500,000 in '69 to less than 200,000 by '72. But the bombing intensified. The Paris Peace Accords were signed in January 1973. The agreement mandated a ceasefire, the withdrawal of all American forces, and the release of prisoners of war. In exchange, North Vietnam could keep 150,000 troops in South Vietnam. It was surrender with paperwork. Nixon called it peace. Henry Kissinger and Vietnamese negotiator Le Duc Tho won the Nobel Peace Prize. Le Duc Tho refused it. The war wasn't over. American forces withdrew. By March 29, 1973, the last combat troops left Vietnam. 59 American prisoners of war came home. Many had been tortured in the Hanoi, Hilton, and other prison camps for years. Senator John McCain endured 5.5 years of captivity, beatings, broken bones, and isolation. South Vietnam collapsed without American support. In April 1975, North Vietnamese forces surrounded Saigon. On April 29th, Operation Frequent Wind evacuated the remaining Americans and some South Vietnamese allies. Helicopters lifted off from the roof of the American embassy as desperate crowds tried to force their way aboard. The next day, North Vietnamese tanks crashed through the gates of the presidential palace. South Vietnam ceased to exist. The war was over. The communists had won. The cost defies comprehension. According to Defense Department casualty records, 58,220 Americans died in Vietnam. 304,000 were wounded. Over 1,000 are still listed as missing. Vietnamese casualties, North and South, military and civilian, exceeded 3 million dead. The land remains poisoned. Unexploded ordnance still kills and maims decades later. Agent Orange continues to cause birth defects in the third generation. The veterans came home to a nation that didn't want to remember. There were no victory parades, no national gratitude. Many were spat upon, called baby killers, treated with contempt and suspicion. The Veterans Administration was overwhelmed. Post-traumatic stress disorder, then called shell shock or combat fatigue, went largely untreated. Suicide, addiction, homelessness ravaged the veteran community. The psychological wounds never healed for many. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington was dedicated in 1982. 58,220 names engraved in black granite. Maya Lin's design was controversial, a scar in the earth rather than a triumphant monument. But it became the most visited memorial in the capital. People touch the names, leave flowers, weep for sons and fathers and brothers they never got to bury properly. Vietnam shattered American exceptionalism. The belief that the United States could win any war, could export democracy through force, could reshape the world in its image, died in the jungles and rice paddies of Southeast Asia. The war cost over $168 billion, trillions in today's money. It fractured the American political consensus, deepened racial divides, fueled distrust in government that persists to this day. The Pentagon Papers, leaked by Daniel Ellsberg in 1971, revealed that successive administrations had systematically lied to the public about the war's progress and prospects. No memorial, no apology, no retrospective wisdom can resurrect the dead. The war was built on flawed assumptions sustained by lies and ended in defeat. The domino theory proved false. Communism didn't sweep Southeast Asia. Vietnam today is a socialist republic that trades with the United States, manufactures American goods, and welcomes American tourists. The war that killed millions and destroyed a generation changed nothing strategically. It only proved that even superpowers bleed when they fight wars they don't understand, in places they don't belong, for reasons they can't explain. The jungle has reclaimed the fire bases. The tunnels are museums now. The names on the wall remain,